Hi, I'm Theo from What Team, and I'm going to be talking about the development of our game, Block Up. In its current incarnation, Block Up is a split-screen multiplayer game where you and a friend work together to build upwards to avoid lava that's rapidly rising. However, the origins of Block Up were very different. When we started working together, we decided that we wanted to make a game that was all about social play. We wanted a game that would provide a context that allowed interesting social dynamics to emerge. The original concept behind Block Up was a semi-open world that was played over LAN. In this game, everything was made of bright, colourful toy building blocks. Originally, we were going to have all the objects in the game being affected by physics. Players would also have the power to spawn new blocks into the world. We had hoped that this would provide players the opportunity to build great monuments together, or just be absolute jerks and knock over other players' stuff. However, there was one major issue with this concept. The game was going to have hundreds of objects that were all affected by physics at once, so we had to come up with a way to constrain the amount of blocks in a scene at any one time. One solution that we had was that once the blocks in the scene got too high, we would spawn monsters and they would eat some of the blocks in the scene. The second idea that we had was that blocks would age. When the blocks were first spawned, they would be new and they would be completely subject to physics and could be moved by the player freely. But eventually, the blocks would solidify and they would not be subject to physics and they wouldn't be able to be moved by the player. Finally, the blocks would grow old and turn to dust, thus preventing the amount of blocks in the scene from ever getting too high. For a short period of time, this actually changed the art style of the game. During this time, we experimented with a Vincent van Gogh art style. This was done to reflect the darker mood of the game, as the world around the players was literally wasting away. At this point in time, Block Up actually had a different name. It was called The World We Make. However, very quickly we found that the lack of any clear direction or goal really limited the amount of play and fun that players could actually have with the game. In other words, we just needed a really clear goal for our players. But thanks to the fact that blocks were temporary now, this gave players a really good incentive to keep building upwards, because if they didn't, they'd fall to their death. Because the game was now about trying to build as high as you possibly could, the darker tone of Vincent van Gogh just wasn't going to work. So we went back to the bright bold colours that were originally conceived at the start of the project. But there are a few more things that we had to do before Block Up really started taking shape. We made it so that lava was destroying the blocks rather than the blocks were aging, because this was a much more tangible reason for blocks to disappear. Then we made blocks snap to a grid and not actually be affected by physics at all. Once we did this, we found we had the basis of a really fun game. Since then, we've made the game a split-screen multiplayer game rather than LAN. We've also changed the camera to be third person, and we've added in a bunch of other mechanics to keep the game fresh and interesting while you're playing it. The result is the game that you see before you today. I hope you've enjoyed this brief look into the development of Block Up, and thanks for watching.